Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing, well, it may not be quite apparent exactly what we're discussing from the title of this video. So the title is, when because I said so goes wrong. I got to thinking of this. I was talking to a friend over the past weekend about sort of all the news, and I'll get into it here in a minute, but everything going on around the mask mandate. And at the end of the day, the whole thing is just essentially based on a because I said so argument, in my opinion. And I will get into the analysis of why I believe that. And then sort of when it goes wrong, it's not, this whole mask mandate thing is not going great. It needs to end for a lot of different reasons, myriad reasons at this point, in fact. And it's just causing confusion and consternation, in my opinion. Again, we'll get into it in a minute. But again, the reason for the title, I was thinking of one of my favorite comedians, arguably one of the great philosophers, perhaps, of the last quarter century, is Dave Chappelle. And he used to have the sketch on his show, when keeping it real goes wrong. And I just thought, this seemed kind of analogous. Not exactly apples to apples, but maybe you'll agree as you get through the rest of this video. But the reason for the video is I was reading in the Thai Examiner, that's thaiexaminer.com. Article is titled, Conflicting Signals Nationwide and in Phuket on Face Mask Mandate with 2 Volt Faces this week. Quoting directly, impatience appears to be growing in the nightlife sector and across the foreign tourism industry, not for not only a return to full normality, but stronger support for Thailand's vibrant nighttime culture, which is at the heart of the country's attraction to foreign tourists. This took on a political tone this week, with the Thai cabinet voting down a proposal from public health officials to rescind the face mask mandate in June, while the new governor of Bangkok and Pheu Thai Party Minister Chad Sitipun has voiced support for such a move in the capital. Quoting further, the governor of Phuket, Narong Wonsieo, on Friday rescinded a May 31st order. Now, this gets a little confusing. Rescinded a May 31st order which would have made face masks optional in public parks, on beaches, and in open spaces where social distancing can be easily achieved. The sudden reversal of the order came on Friday after a series of clarifications and walkbacks on Wednesday and Thursday. This week, the cabinet in Bangkok, in a surprising move, rejected a proposal to scrap the face mask requirement from mid-June. Meanwhile, the newly installed governor of Bangkok, Chad Sitipun, has indicated he would like to see an end to face masks in Bangkok to boost trade and is to consult with officials on this matter. So that's all interesting. On top of that, this is a little bit more recent article from the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Chad backs 2 a.m. closing time, quoting directly. And that was a pretty broad article, but we're just quoting a tiny little excerpt. I urge those watching this video, go read these in their entirety if you're interested in this, because a lot going on here. Quoting directly, regarding the possibility of easing the face mask wearing mandate, Mr. Chad said the CCSA will make a decision, but the City Hall will recommend such a move. Yeah, good. We need to recommend such a move. And I don't understand what the CCSA is doing. Quite frankly, I don't understand where the CCSA claims the legal authority to do this at all. As we've discussed, this has been bandied about, the public health minister himself, and we've done a video on this, has been quoted as saying there are no laws backing this up. So, which then begs the question, how are they doing it? Which we did a video, I think it was last week, I think it was titled Per Se, when we quoted this article where they said, well, it's not a law per se, but it's an enforceable mandate. Well, that's not a thing in a civil law country, okay? And let me explain why. I'm going to just throw this up. I know this may seem simplistic. It's Wikipedia, and this is when they're explaining, the basic concepts of civil law. And let me be clear, I come from a common law background. My doctorate is primarily in common law studies, but you do take courses on comparative law, conflicts of law, things of this nature. And over time, I have studied pretty intimately just as what I would call an outside observer, the Thai legal system, which is a civil code-based system, which is why I want to quote this from Wikipedia. Codification under law, quoting directly, in law, codification is the process of collecting and restating the law of a jurisdiction in certain areas, usually by subject, forming a legal code, i.e. a codex or book of law. Quoting further, this is really key because I've had a lot of people asking me about this, and I don't think they understand just the fundamentals of the law, of jurisprudence. Codification is one of the defining features of civil law jurisdictions. Let me state that again. Codification is one of the defining features of civil law jurisdictions. In common law systems, such as that of English law, codification is the process of converting and consolidating judge-made law into statute law. But to be clear, and I want to say this one more time, let me just repeat, quote, codification is one of the defining features of civil law jurisdictions. When I first started comparing civil law to common law, and when I first started doing it, especially in a Thai context, but I've also seen it, for example, when briefly dealing with things involving like Louisiana's code in the United States. They utilize sort of a Napoleonic code-inspired legal system there. The civil code is different from the common law. The common law, you can have this kind of judge-made law out there that exists, and it may not even be fully codified. And for people that don't operate in a common law system, this can be a little bit scary. And common law folks that deal with common law a lot often find civil law a little bit weird to deal with, for lack of a better term, because it's done very differently in both places. So in a common law system, you could have a situation where, the overriding authority to do something is somewhat nebulous. I'll put it that way. But that's not how it is in a civil law system. In a civil law system, you've got to codify what is legal and what is not. If you want to make something illegal or create a quote-unquote mandate, you've got to codify it. And you can't codify it vaguely. You've got to come out and say it. And as we've said, there's nothing in the Communicable Diseases Act that states that a mask mandate can be imposed. So therefore, just because the emergency decree springs from the Communicable Diseases Act, how does that connect the dots between something that's not codified becoming an enforceable mandate? How do you get there? The short answer is you can't. I don't think anybody exactly wants to hear it this bluntly, but really at this point, especially 2 years later, this is not June 2020. This is not June 2021. It's June 2022. We're in a very different position than we were in even a year ago when I had an issue with this to begin with, because I was very unclear and I remain unclear, and I'm happy to stand corrected. But everything I've read has been citing the Communicable Diseases Act. Well, there is nothing codified in the Communicable Diseases Act that says the government can impose a mask mandate. It's just not there, and there you go. I mean, at the end of the day, that's sort of where I'm at on that. Now, if somebody wants to have a counter argument, I guess I'm open to hearing somebody out, but, especially years in, whatever. That being said, it does look like this is moving at a pretty rapid pace. I'm very much hoping we could be done with this. I don't think there's there's some countries who have taken hysteria to a whole different level. And I'm not going to point any fingers, but most other countries have put this pretty well behind them. I don't understand why there's this big push and pull on this issue at this point when we know exactly what this is. We know it's not some major existential threat. We're seeing other countries that have pulled back all of these mandates and they're fine. So what are we still doing? And meanwhile, as noted in these articles, this is having a tremendously negative impact on tourism, on the prospects of tourism, especially looking at high season, this coming high season at the end of 2022. People book their flights and make travel plans now for that time. We really, really need to put this behind us as amicably as we can and just move on with our lives, because really, I think we are, to put it one way, maybe we're all just talking past each other. But I don't think that's the case. I think there's been a lot of misinformation out there. And frankly, if I have, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, if I have a major bugbear in all of this, it's definitely, I'm looking at the media. The media has been, in my opinion, not really doing their job in terms of really looking at the situation. Instead, it seems many have kind of just fallen into some sort of hysterical, fit of hyperbole the last couple of years. But it needs to end now. We've got to get on with our lives. Thailand's got to get back on our economic feet, because if we don't and we keep languishing in this feedback loop on these issues, I think other countries are going to get ahead of us, especially here in Southeast Asia, especially in the tourism sector, and it's only going to hurt in the long term.